I'm stupid.
Oh no.
Hey boys, welcome back to Books on Tap. I didn't have the overlay on top of us, so we were just doing that the whole time, and they saw us the whole time. There's the song. The song's over. The song's over now. Hey, welcome back to Books on Tap.
Welcome.
It's Dylan.
Been too long.
It's Ryland. It's Kieran, and it's Maui, my little kitty cat.
The highlight of the show.
He decided
It's been a long hiatus from this.
It's been a busy couple months.
Long book.
We're back. Very long, epic series. 10 book series. That's what it felt like.
Epic 10-book series. But I definitely didn't read 3/4 of it yesterday. But you got a Heather's pick on yours.
Man, Heather's pick, man.
What do you have?
Around.
It's your thing.
Mine just says National Book Award winner.
You know what Heather's pick
which
book
is
means?
the same. It's the same. It means
Not the
that
same as
someone...
Heather's pick.
Mine is the ebook.
The same as Heather's pick.
Yours just means that Heather picked that one out at the bookstore.
You know what that means?
I just told you.
No.
It means more than that.
It means more than that. Yeah,
it means if I'm dissatisfied with this book, I can go up to Heather and tell her I don't like this book.
That's a good place to start. Is that what you're gonna do?
Mine.
Yeah, it's a good point. But no, legitimately, you
know
what the Heather's pick, man. I can take this back and say I didn't like it, and they'll give me a refund.
Yeah, or,
Heather picked it. Pretty legit.
Yeah,
is that what you're gonna be doing?
That's the question. Will you be?
Yeah, I should just get just Heather's picks books, so I can keep doing that. No, I like the book. I'm gonna give it to my mom tomorrow.
Yeah.
This weekend, yeah. No, she wants to read it, and I've talked to multiple people about it, and it's a great book. I like it a lot. I think it's tough at the last few chapters. So I actually waited to read the last few chapters until today because sometimes the book just put me in a pretty upsetting state, and so I wanted to make sure that I could talk about it if the ending was too intense. But then it kind of made me rush the ending a little bit more, so that made it less intense. And I found this book probably the toughest book I've ever read in terms of there was at times where the book spoke to me in like a way that was so powerful. That was like one of the most powerful experiences with the book. I don't know, it just was so deep. I just felt like I think I'm going through a bit of a tougher time in my life right now. So like hearing someone go through grief and like talk about it and I just really felt her through her words and like some of the way she wrote things that were like just very unique way. I don't even know, they weren't even like super special her words, but I don't know, just the way she put them together. I found them super impactful, and so I was able to get into it and like, wow, this person's incredible, and like this book is just like I'm just so with her, and I was just so in it, and it was like it just felt so cool, and I was like, this is an incredible, magnificent book, and then it's just, but then at other times it's just really tough to get in that headspace, and I'm just looking at it analytically, and it's just a lot tougher to like see someone going through grief and be like, oh, okay, like how do I take this? And so I don't know, I found it really tough. I was trying to reach for the book when I felt like I could get into it more. Not even necessarily, and like I don't even have to be sad to get into it. Sometimes it would just be like I don't know, it's very hard to describe how I had to be to read this book to fully appreciate it, but I've never had a book where I had to be in such a mood to be able to appreciate it, and that polar difference, and I could just tell right away when I picked it up whether I was gonna enjoy it or not. And so like that to me makes me think that this book is really great. And the whole like almost like I don't know, maybe it just was the parts I was reading, but like to me it just thinks like it is a tough book to read in any state. You can't just pick it up casually and just expect, you know, it's you're not gonna get the full value of it in that regard, at least for me.
Do you want to go, Dylan, or me?
I can go next if you want. I liked the book. I thought it was extremely well written. The way that she like linked thoughts together felt very like it felt very off the cuff and vulnerable. And it felt very much like we were getting like a very accurate glimpse into her like thought processes and thought patterns throughout the whole ordeal, which I appreciated. Part of the There were some bits when it was just going into like her spiraling where I thought I appreciated how honest it was with what she was thinking, but a few of the times it felt a bit boring, where it was like it's important for you to go down this rabbit hole, but we go down a rabbit hole for 3 pages and it's like, oh, it just links back to something else, and it's like the whole point of this little bit was just to link back to this story a bit, and you can kind of ignore all the little bits in there and you'll get the main idea of what she was going through. Like I can link the thematic idea of like you just like the thought process runs around and then it loops back, and there was a lot of that where a lot of it was like looping kind of in random thought processes that weren't important themselves other than their linkage back to the like idea of thinking about the dead husband or Quintana. And but contrary with Ryland's take, I just enjoyed it every time I picked it up. There was kind of this throughout the time, whenever I think about reading it, I'd be like, I don't want to read this, and I'd like put it off. But every time I actually picked it up, it was more. I kind of felt like a morbid curiosity that I could very easily just get into it and just read it, and I wasn't. I don't think I was actually very like deeply affected by reading this book. It was it was very interesting. I really appreciated her ability to go in depth with her thoughts and seeing that thought process. I thought was really interesting. But I also feel like I get a lot more. There were only like 2 or 3 points where I was like where I got a bit teary. And normally when I read a book, I get teary a lot more. Like from almost all the fantasy books I read, I probably get teary more than I got teary in this book, which I thought was interesting. Maybe I just I think I think a bit more in themes, and I feel like the symbolism, the themes translate better to like fiction than nonfiction. Because like I remember when I was reading through all those thought patterns and stuff, I'm like, oh, I understand what the theme is here, and like I can like think about like, okay, you get into a thought loop, and then stuff happens and it brings back to that thing, but like I kind of just obscure all the actual details because I didn't think it mattered too much, other than like the theme and the symbolism that it all happens with. But overall, it was definitely like a very enjoyable read, and there wasn't any points during it where I was like, oh, it's poorly written, or like I'm not enjoying reading this. The whole time I was kind of like fixed with like a morbid curiosity about the whole thing.
Interesting. Yeah, both you guys have very interesting perspectives. I think definitely more on the Dylan side of things, just in the way that I took it in. I feel like Rylan, you had like an optimal reading experience with this because you were finding those moments where you could actually like you were thinking about when you could appreciate this book, and I definitely I didn't give myself that opportunity in the same way. I think the first 40% of the book, I really enjoyed it, and Dylan, what you were saying, I really fully agree with. It's like she's an excellent writer. The whole time, I was like, this is extremely well written. No complaints from that end. I did feel like it was a bit losing me a bit in the middle sections, especially when it seemed like a lot of the chapters were focusing on that spiral effect that she was going through, and they would just go through a whirlwind of memories continuously. And at that point, I still appreciated it, but I had the least appreciation because it was just like on the surface level, I appreciate the story that she's telling and the mental image that she's portraying. But beyond that, I'm like, it's not really doing much emotionally for me. And I feel like I had such a logical perspective on this book. It didn't get me upset at any point. And I felt bad about that. Like I was like, man, what's wrong with me? I'm reading this book. And I can spell out for you how just like torn up this person's life has become, and how disconnected from reality, from like normal events this person's life has become. I can explain it to you, but I can't empathize with it in any way, just because I feel like I got the impression that she was a very logical person, which is through her writing, and I just connected with that part of her most of all, instead of actually connecting emotionally. So yeah, I think I feel like I lost something from that, but I still enjoyed the book from front to back. And yeah, I'll leave it there for now. But
yeah, I think I think Kieran and I are definitely probably more on one side of the aisle on this, and like similar thoughts on it. Rylan maybe a bit different.
Yeah, I think I'm just going through a tougher time.
Are you surprised about our reactions?
No, because like I definitely think like half the time I was reading the book, I felt how you guys felt. At least half. There's only a few times where I was able to really get into it fully, and like I don't even know. I have some things highlighted, so maybe hopefully it'll be the right things, and hopefully I can bring back that moment I felt. But it just like sometimes it wouldn't be parts that I felt like should have been sad that were the saddest. It's just yeah, I don't know. I think I'm just like dealing with my own crap, and so I feel that I don't know. I think it's probably easier maybe for me to be more in it. Like she says in the book, like you know, she was fascinated by this topic a lot too, and then when she went through it, and like she does kind of describe how like even just basically how you guys approached it, and like how and even me, like, I feel like I felt a lot, but like, do I think I'm any better prepared for going through what she would run through? No, like, I don't think so. But I do think that
yeah, I felt like such an observer. It was like, this is fascinating. This is crazy.
I remember,
and then I was just gonna say she did a great job of putting you into the setting where it's like, okay, this is why in my mindset this made sense for me, like this string of thoughts, or this is why this string of thoughts happened to me. And I'm like, oh, that is fascinating, and I can see that happening. And that's where it ended for me. It wasn't like I am now with you in this line of thought and following along with you. And I think that's just a lot because I was like, I wasn't in a bad headspace reading this, and I'm also just blissfully ignorant of this process in my own life, right? So
yeah, I remember thinking a couple times throughout the book, like, this is not a unique experience that she's had here by any stretch of the imagination. This is an experience that is so common that like one of the things I was maybe evaluating in my head was like, is this any like, why is your experience of this so special that there's like a book that I'm reading about it? Which is kind of, I guess, why I maybe didn't enjoy the super in-depth memory loops as much. Because I feel like the value of this book for people to read isn't necessarily in like the exact circumstances, but in like the themes that it portrays and in the thought patterns and stuff. But on the other hand, you kind of need those specific instances for it to feel real. So I don't really have like a proper answer for that, other than that was just something that I had thought about during it, and I'm not sure how I feel about it afterwards.
Yeah, well, everyone goes through it, but being an incredible writer and having someone like I do think it was a unique experience in some ways, and like first of all, it's unique in that like someone suddenly died. She spent like 24 hours a day with him for like 20 years. Like I don't know how much closer of a bond you can have than she had with her partner. Like I'm sure that people do, and like mother and kid and everything. But like, and then being able to articulate your thoughts and actually writing a lot of this within the year after, like that's pretty rare. And I don't necessarily think the content, like what she went through, is unique, but being able to articulate and actually like think to write things down and like as you're going through it the year after you're writing a book, like that's pretty crazy. I know that's not really what you're hitting at, but like I think that's pretty rare that someone is able to like put thoughts to paper, and like that's why it comes out as so raw.
Yeah,
because she actually
and have
wrote this.
and also have a daughter in intense
Yeah,
life-threatening situations for like months on it during that process.
I was sure she was gonna die. I feel like someone
Oh
like
my
I feel like
God.
someone had like spoiled to me that she died, and then I was like so
Dude,
surprised when she
same
didn't.
thing happened to me, man. I'm
Someone was
like,
like,
oh
"Oh
man,
yeah,
why did
didn't
she
her
die?
daughter die too or something?" And I was like, "Oh shit!" And then like it didn't happen.
Thank
I think she
God.
would. I thought we'd know that right away. I'm like, you
I
don't
thought I
slow
was
burn a book like
spoiled.
this.
I thought there was a point. Sorry, I thought there was a point in like a third of the way through maybe where she was like implying Quintana didn't make it in a couple months. But anyway, I have to go back
I
and
don't
find
know,
it again.
man.
But,
Yeah, that was just upsetting, man.
Yeah, I kind of agree with both of you about the like. Probably it's definitely not a unique experience, but it's unique in the way she's able to portray it so well, and probably just resonates with a lot of people because they aren't able to articulate it as well.
Yeah, to be
themselves.
fully clear, I don't really have an opinion one way or the other after reading it. It was just a thought that like kept coming to my head as I was reading it, and like it was something I was like considering and like thoughtful of as I was reading it, but I don't really have an opinion on it either way after finishing reading it.
Yeah, I think most of the time for me, I enjoyed it. I enjoyed hearing about her life.
Yeah.
Sometimes it would just be too much at once, like too much of a continuous thought that doesn't change. And then
Yeah, and I was like fine just like kind of skimming over some of those. Like there's a lot of naming of people in this book, and I skimmed almost every name and like title. So like, I don't really care who wrote this book that you're talking about.
yeah, I think at some points when I was most disconnected from the book and least caring about her, I would be like, why are you like, I feel like you're low-key flexing about your life a little bit. And I'm like, it's kind of weird. But then I'd quickly like stamp that thought out in my mind and just be like, you know what? This is her life, bro. Just go ahead and tell us about your life.
Yeah.
So it's fine.
And there were some really vulnerable parts that I really liked. Like one of my favorite parts near the end of the book was when she was talking about that conversation that she'd had with her husband about what he meant about like it all comes back in the end.
Yeah.
And then she had thought that like it had meant something else.
Oh,
the
yeah.
Kid knew. And the kid knew.
The kid knew too, and it was like
Yeah.
it was like I like that I like that she was very like open about her ignorance there. I would say ignorance, because I thought it was pretty obvious what he was getting at too. But and then like the question that she asked herself at the end of that bit, where it was like, did I even like know anything? Like, what else was I wrong about? Like, you can kind of spiral like that.
And it seems like they knew each other more than they could ever possibly know each other, being spending 24 hours a day for 20 years. Not literally, but like more time than anyone ever than normal, and anyone ever normal spends with each other. But like, she did still like, John did seem to have this like mysteriousness about him. And
Yeah,
then like
it's like,
she didn't understand him fully at all. Like
yeah,
he would
And
I
she
kind
admits
of got
that.
I got that vibe a
yeah.
lot, that like they weren't necessarily as close as, or like it's like you've spent so much time with someone but you still don't even really know them.
Yeah. Like you made these like assumptions and
Yeah, like
I
with
didn't get like too morbid about that. I feel like they did know each other probably more than they were in the top like 0.1% of knowing each other, but it still doesn't even scratch the surface of how complex it is.
yeah, how
yeah, I
complex
didn't take it as a
humans are.
negative. I was just
Same,
like
yeah,
found it interesting.
exactly. There was
Yeah.
this one other part that I thought was quite interesting, when she was talking about how she wished that she could have him there and bounce her thoughts off of him.
Yeah.
Um, and like she was evaluating kind of that, what that would look like, and like she was kind of creating like this version of him in her head that she was talking back and forth with. And like I've been doing a lot of AI research the last like little bit, and so like when she was going through that bit, I'm like, what would it be like if you could um have like an AI saved version of someone's consciousness, um that could persist after their death? Would it be like that person or not? Would it be like talking to them before? Because there was a specific portion that she was talking about like um the way that someone would respond based on their memories. And it was like, what would it be like? I was like, maybe it would be like accurate if it was based off of memory, like the conversation response was based on memories like before the AI model was created. But like, what if like after the AI model was created, would those memories also be like the same person, or would that be like talking to someone different?
It's
I
interesting.
think we're getting there. We're getting there,
I think
man.
we're getting there too. That's some Black Mirror stuff.
Yeah,
Yeah. Or even just like looking at everything you've ever written, or like people have journals and like wonder how accurate you could get it. Even just with like external,
Yeah,
not
well,
like
I think
internal
if you took like a very public celebrity who's been on countless films and
interviews and
TV
stuff.
shows and talk shows and has their own podcast and has their own social media and has a journal and did all of that into an AI, it would be pretty indistinguishable.
I I don't think you could get pretty close, but it's gonna be not like it. I think you could probably be able to, once we fully like figure out how the human brain works, I think you can probably map that to like a neural network. But we're very far away from that.
Mm. Mm. Yeah, it would
I
never
hope
be
we. I
exactly.
hope. I hope I'm dead by the time we get there, bro. I'm
Yeah,
done. I'm
you're
done with our
done.
technology. I'm gonna be an old man in like
You want
2 years,
now?
man.
I can stop right here.
Yeah, I'm
Yeah.
pretty done with social
I'm
media, honestly.
Yeah.
Like,
I'm maxed out on technology, man. It's already too much.
Can you imagine
I
saying
really,
that 50 years ago as a 25-year-old? I'm max. I'm done.
yeah.
I'm out, bro.
I know I'm gonna look at myself in 5 years and laugh at that, and then 50 years, if I'm still here, then laugh even harder. But like, just so much, man. Too much.
too
No,
much.
too much, man. My first highlight of the book
Yeah, let's hear
was
it.
she's talking to Quintana and saying, "You're safe.
Oh boy.
And that was the first thing she remembers whispering to her when she was at UCLA in the ICU. "I'm here. You're going to be all right."
Okay,
After
that
what
part
she
kind of
told her right before
yeah.
she left.
No, but what I highlighted was not about the exact scene, but just like she's like, "Do all parents feel this? When my mother was near death at age 90, she told me she was ready to die, but could not. You and Jim need me," she said. "My brother and I were by then in our 60s." Highlighted that. I just thought it was like you have these ideas in your head, and like it'll never go away. Like your whole life, like it's not logical at all at that point. Obviously, it's just like
Mm-hmm.
I don't know. It's just like a lot of that. This book was just like that theme of just like her, like the memories, like, oh yeah, it doesn't matter if you fall in love again, like in the marriage, like the right at the last part they were talking about that too, like how someone got remarried and they're like it's about the time spent obviously and the memories you created, and I don't really know I'm going with this, but it's just oh yeah, this is pretty big. I don't know if this is a big jump. I'm not sure if you guys can connect the dots probably better than me, but um like it's about a kid telling their parent to get remarried, and of course you can, but marriage is something different. Marriage is memory, marriage is time. She didn't know the songs. I recall being told that a friend of a friend had said after an attempt to repeat the experience. I don't know how those two to go together, but they do to me a bit. But just like, yeah, just hold on to things with everything you have, and yeah, I don't know how to really describe it, but I don't know, that impacted me.
I feel
A lot
like,
of this book, like I feel like this impacted me. I don't know.
well, the first thing that you said about the "you're safe, I'm here," specifically surrounding the first time that she says that, because she says that multiple times throughout the book,
Mm-hmm.
is I feel like I understood my mom and parents a bit better in that moment. Whether it's true or not, I don't know, but if I actually do understand them more, but it's it did hit me a bit because I was like, they're. I think my mom once told me, she's like, I'm never gonna stop being a mom.
Yeah,
Like,
I've got the
it's just like
same.
it's like no matter how old you get, no matter how little how independent you think you are, it's always gonna be the same situation from my end. And I feel like I wanted to resist to that idea less after reading that. Yeah.
Yeah, I definitely see a lot of like parallels there as well with my mom as well.
Yeah.
And then the second part, I thought it was just really about the you can't replace 40 years of memories thing. I just thought it was really powerful the way she said that. So it's like, but again, I was like in
Didn't
that
know the
moment,
songs, man.
I switched to the audiobook
Oh,
half and half
Mm.
you
through
got the
like,
audiobook too, man. You paid a lot of money for this book.
oh, I used yeah, I guess I did. I used a token from Audible, so
Okay.
I just get those. But
Yeah, I need to fucking use all
actually,
mine.
I was hoping the audiobook would kind of make me connect even more, but I felt like I connected less. Now it was interesting.
Mm.
I felt like I was listening to a talk show about someone describing their grief at that point.
It'd have to be
Whereas
her.
reading it, I feel like it could have been an anonymous person,
Yeah, I think it'd have to be her for it to be really impactful.
and it wasn't her
I feel like
reading
even
it.
if it was her, it wouldn't be as impactful as I feel like this book. It makes a lot more sense to read. Like it feels a lot different reading it than it would listening to it.
Maybe she
Like when you're
spoke it.
listening, you maybe like connect a bit less with the words on the page, and you miss a bit more of like the sentence structure. I think, which I think is really important with this, just because the way it's written, there like if I'm being honest, I think there's quite a difference between audiobooks and books in terms of like the experience you have um, listening or reading them. And I think a lot of the expertise and finesse of this would be lost in the audio version, which might be the way that Kieran felt.
I think it could be a lot of things. I think you're hitting a lot of things on the head there. It was another person's translation of emotions of this other person. And I think a lot of things had double, triple meanings in this book, emotionally wise. So really hard to capture that just by speaking.
I do think it could be more impactful if it was her, and I'm not sure if it would need to be during the time when she was reading it, she was making the audiobook, or if it could be post. Like I just remember that song we were listening to the other day, Kieran, where it was like this guy telling a story, and that wasn't legitimate probably, but like it felt like it was real, and like I feel like people can like get back in that headspace of how they were when they were writing this book. Like she could potentially do that, and then you add an extra layer.
I don't think she's
like if someone
anymore, but
she's dead.
Yeah, pretty sure.
No.
It was written 20 years ago, so.
Oh, it's 20 years ago? Oh my gosh.
I think it was at least.
Yeah, she died in 2021.
Oh my gosh.
She was 87.
Damn.
She was born in 34.
Man, no. Yeah. But anyways, yeah, I think the safe bet definitely is to read it. I really tried to think a lot about how I read this book. Partly as a self-defense mechanism, partly to be able to appreciate it more. Because I wanted to find that perfect balance of like, I don't want to make a bad day worse, but I don't want to be in a very analytical space where I can empathize with her at least a bit. Or, not empathize, but like sympathize. Empathize probably is the right word, actually. Because, yeah, I empathize.
Yeah. Just to go back a bit to what you were talking about, the memories thing, I think like a big concept on this is how like you're like she prepared her or what she thought was mentally for this, and like going back like what you thought you should think and everything. And like a big concept in this one is how like biological memories are, and how like so much of our like emotions and so much of our emotions are tied with like our memory and are like really changeable based on how you think. It's a lot of it is just you've been with someone for 40 years, you have all these memories that are like baked into like who you are as a person. That's not something you can just change or will to not be anymore.
Yeah, what really got me is what she was talking about at the end, like near the end, where she's like, all those things that she wanted to tell someone about that she had no one to tell about to, and like every single time that happens, you just have a jab. You know, this person's dead, and then you're like almost everything that she goes about her day, she would tell him about, you know, and then like, and I'm totally that type of person that tells people things. So it's like, and also there's just so many things you could tell. Like some of the details she was saying are like so uninteresting to the average person, you know. But it's like such a small thing that they shared that like that only he would care about in the whole world. And it's like, it's so sad, you know.
Having every thought bring up that memory, and everything you see everywhere you go bring up a different memory with that person. It's like like the whole sequence where she's in LA and Quintana's in UCLA hospital, and she's avoiding random locations around the city because she lived there for 20 years. And it's like that combined with trying not to speak to a person who's not there must have been absolutely unbearable. It's like
I don't know. Does it make you guys like? Do you guys like? You guys didn't feel a lot with this book, but like, is there at least like an element of fear that like when this happens to you that you're just fucked? like,
No, not for me.
no. I think
think it'd be different for you.
no.
Yeah, probably not. I think it would be slightly different, but it's just something you deal with, you know.
That happens.
Yeah, I don't know. Just that like illusion part really gets me. That like, yeah, I don't know. She can't even. She's even. She's just completely illogical about so many different things, and I don't know. It doesn't even leave it at a happy point too. She's just like, yeah, I don't feel like the only reason things are getting better is because the memories are fading a bit. It's like, okay.
It's just like 4 years of deep connection with the person you spend all your time with, or your working time, all your after work time, all your trips, all your meals, and it ends in an instant. Of course, you're going to be in hell. And that was where my logical thinking went on. And it wasn't like, I can't believe this is real. It was more like, I've never been led through something in such a logical way where I can understand why this person is going through what they're going through. And it was just like, yeah, I was just an observer, like I said. Just curious. Morbid curiosity.
Yeah. I think maybe it's a bit hard for me to identify with her. Like I feel like I identified more with John in the story, even though he died. Just like the things that he would say and the thought processes that he went through, I think are more things that I would think. And it seemed like he was a bit more accepting of the whole situation, or of situations in general.
Dark topics.
Yeah. And then I think like the bit at the end of the book where she was talking about how like they were swimming in that little bit and then it was so easy for John, but it was always so hard for her to just go with the flow and move on.
The very end of the book, yeah.
I think that was really
what a way to end the book.
Yeah.
Very good.
Yeah.
I feel like I identify with John on that one where it's like I feel like my whole life I just go with the flow.
It's good.
To the detriment of myself in some ways. For sure.
Yeah, I don't think there's any perfect way to be.
Yeah, I definitely couldn't relate to her as a person. I was just gonna say as well. Just such a different way of thinking about things. That was most apparent in like the hospital situation with Quintana. And obviously I can't relate in the first place because it's like a mother and daughter relationship. So it's like I'm already out. But then just like the way she was like, I know this specialist. I'm gonna call this specialist in, and I'm gonna like look at this. I'm gonna talk to this person, and it's like, I don't know what. I guess I don't know. I guess I don't know until I'm there in that same situation. But I just found it like it lost me a little bit. She lost me a little bit there.
I thought that was kind of like a crazy play, but like it also was kind of I actually felt like she might have made a difference. Like I don't know if she like she might have. There was a chance she could have made a difference.
Well, no, I'm
Or-
not saying
yeah.
that she didn't or did, but just that
Yeah.
like I don't know if I would have done the same thing. I feel like I'm just not that kind of person who's like who would manage things like that and be on top of it, everything like that.
Yeah,
Yeah.
I feel like given the medical system right now, I feel like maybe back then I wouldn't have been like that, but I feel like nowadays it's so fucked that and people don't have the bandwidth necessarily to be like you kind of need to push, I think, nowadays to get stuff done properly. So I feel like maybe like 10, 15 years ago I wouldn't have been as I'd have been a bit more critical of the pushiness, but nowadays I'd definitely be on that bandwagon, or at least try to be. I feel like my demeanor would definitely be more towards the not being pushy. I'm definitely like conflict avoidant in that sense, but I do think it was probably the right idea for her to be doing like that.
Yeah, I think my first instinct would be to not be like that, but I think if someone just died, if my husband just died, then I would be pushy. I'd be like, fuck everyone in the system.
Yeah,
Fuck
exactly.
everyone.
Right. It's like
Yeah,
I'm
you
gonna full
failed.
send.
Yeah, they've already
Yeah,
failed you at that point. From your
yeah,
perspective, I feel that you're kind of just like fuck you.
yeah. Fuck it. Like I'm gonna. There's no way I'm losing this person. And like, yeah. And then she like did like she was watching them in the hospital and like making sure they were doing stuff. And I don't know if it had effects on things, but like there's something to be said with just how our medical system, how broken it is. That if you're a smart individual and you dedicate like weeks to studying like your very specific situation, like you might actually know some things and catch some things that
They
can
don't.
actually
Yeah.
help. Yeah.
Yeah. I think it's
So
also like an interesting bit to look at that it wasn't really until she had got the autopsy report, like a year later, that it seemed like that she actually had any kind of acceptance at all about the situation. Um, and yeah, I think those unanswered questions really ate her alive. And it wasn't until she could kind of finally put some kind of like finality on what had happened the night that her husband died that she could move on.
truly say like nothing could have been done,
Yeah.
and he had a bad heart. There were so many things that they had already done and completed that extended his life. It was just that was going to be it. And he was the one who said, "I know how I'm going to die now."
yeah.
Yeah.
And the guy called it a widowmaker,
Yeah.
and she's like, "I guess I'm a widow now." Happened.
Yeah. I love the I really really like the Gawain Green Knight
Oh yeah.
quotes, the I will die in 2 days.
Yeah. Yeah.
That was one of my favorite sequences. My favorite chapters
Yeah.
was when she was talking about she was like driving herself mad, evaluating his actions in the days leading up to his death. If he knew that he was going to die.
That was to me too. That was one of my favorite parts because it wasn't just like I also don't even know like I don't know if whether he knew or subconsciously or consciously, like you know what I mean, those are two different things too. Like
I feel like
I
he
think
knew
there's a good chance.
subconsciously.
Yeah, I think he knew subconsciously. Did he know consciously? But like just knowing subconsciously is crazy enough in its own.
Yeah. I feel like he even said he knew consciously because he said to her explicitly that after the operation happened, I now know how I'm going to die.
Yeah, but then it was like 20 years later he died.
Was it 20? I thought it was less than that, but
It's a long time, but I'm
it
saying
was
like
still like
did,
a yeah.
did he know he was gonna die within the next couple of days, like a few days before? That's what I'm saying.
No, not necessarily like I don't know if it was like that close.
Yeah, that's what I'm.
But
That's what I'm. That's what
Well,
I'm talking about.
Yeah, the one that got me the most was like he forgot his notepad, which he never does. He said, "Can you write this down for me? I have an idea." And then that night or the next night, he says, "You can use that if you want."
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
That was really bad, or not bad.
Ah.
Like that was quite big, I thought,
Yeah.
in terms of like that was one of the other things that I was actually considering a lot during this, or not a lot, maybe like two or three good times where I was like thinking about how as humans we like to look back on things and find symbolism where it may or may not have existed at all. There's so many events that happen that we kind like a lot of the times we'll like think that there's coincidences when it's just random chance. Just because we pick out the things that we pattern recognize, but we ignore like the 8,000 times that nothing happened that corresponded to it, and it's just like yeah. So I think there is a lot of that. What's the word? Apparent in these kind of like looking back, and she's focusing on death. So she's remembering and focusing on all these times that came up throughout the last little bit.
Yeah.
And I think she could very easily have been finding other things within those days that might have pointed in a different direction, and there may have been more or less of some kinds of events than others.
And the logical part of me, Jeff, definitely agrees.
Yeah.
Probably
I mean, thematically reading this, you're like, oh my god, this guy knew he was gonna die. But we're only seeing that from like from her perspective on the events that she's remembering and her symbolic and thematic imprint of those on the situation.
Which is what really, from her writing perspective, is what really matters, is that she's been replaying these last 5-6 days before the death over and over and over again. And that's what she's found and focused on.
Yeah, I did think about it logically quite a bit, and like I did feel like I think she mentioned a bunch of things, but that was the only one, like the notebook one, that was like that is a bit weird. That is a bit not fully convinced, but like that was pretty impactful, pretty intense thing to say. Pretty, I don't know. Seems, I'm not saying I'm convinced, but just like be a lot to think about. Yes, sir.
I feel like on one hand though, it's not even really that big of a thing. It's like, it doesn't even necessarily mean that he wasn't going to use it himself. It's more like, oh yeah, you can use that too.
No, yeah, I know she talks more about that. I thought she talked more about that though, like that never happened or something. I don't know. She made it sound like it was a very unique case again because she's probably looking for symbolism, but like, I thought she did touch on that, like how that wasn't a common thing for him to exchange notes like that or something. Or I guess maybe it was just that he never forgets his notebook. But I have a lighthearted moment. Couple of lighthearted moments. This is the chapter when they're talking about Quintana, and I guess I just have a couple of things. They're back to back, but I don't think that. I'm trying to remember where they were. This is the book, but anyway, she's just recalling on memories. I thought it was really cute, the story of Quintana, when the night she put a seed pod from the garden up her nose, and I drove her to the children's hospital. The pediatrician who specialized in seed pods had arrived in his dinner jacket. The next night, she had put up another seed up her nose, wanting to repeat the interesting adventure.
I thought that was the stupidest thing ever. It's like, oh my god.
He's 3! That's so cute. You know what I mean? Like, everyone around her's like freaking out. Like, oh my god, what's gonna happen? She's like, that was awesome. Let's do it again. I thought that was cute. And then I also liked the next page where Mark's like, he's watching the NFL game John said when he hung up, he'll call you at halftime. Just him like making that analysis because she's trying to like for her job. Like her editor wasn't calling back. His wife answered the phone. She said she would have to call back. I don't know. I just thought that was kind of a funny one. He was going on, but I guess looking back on it, it's not as interesting. But
oh, that pod shoot one, I was almost like, no wonder she's dying right now. It's like, this stupid ass kid.
kid. Yeah. Yeah. We are here on the island in the middle of the Pacific in lieu of filing for divorce. Put it in her magazine. Yeah. Did he know I was writing it? He edited it because someone asked her. Did you know that she was writing?
Yeah.
I was like, that's awesome. A little bit into their marriage. Yeah.
That was a good one. It's like, does he know you're writing about this? Yeah, he edited it.
Yeah.
There's never been a greater comeback in the history of writing, bro.
Literally.
Yeah, and then I have a few more highlights, but he took Quintana to the Honolulu Zoo so I could rewrite it. He drove me, I could file it at the Western Union office. He regards Didion at the end of it. That was what you always put at the end of the cable, he said. Why, I said. Because you do, he said. And I thought that, I don't know, just like I like John's vibe.
Yeah.
And then see where that particular vortex sucked me from the Dorothy Draper wallpaper border at Beth Israel north to Quintana at 3, and I should have listened to John. I tell you that I shall not live 2 days, Gowan said. The way you got sideswiped was by going back. Yeah, so I guess it was one of her vortex, but I thought it was an interesting one, I guess, because I got a couple highlights. A couple cool stories about their marriage.
That was a really good one. Part, yeah. I feel like the ending had like four different revelations in a row.
Oh, yeah?
It was like four chapters that were very short, and all of them. One of them was the waves swelling. I think that was right at the end, and then there was. Hold on a second. I highlighted it. Oh, there was the part where she reaches a year later, and she's like, "From now on, when I look back 1 year, John will not have been there 1 year ago." And that part was pretty insane. Like a nail, just like hammered a point home.
Yeah. I thought that was really that part kind of led to like me seeing that there was like light at the end of the tunnel that she was starting to see. I think that she took that as a positive though.
Yeah, I think so as well. It was like,
I think no, maybe not. Like, I mean, at least not.
It was a bit of both.
At least not. At first.
Yeah, I think she took it as negative that she did say like it's really upsetting that the memories are going to get more faded and she's going to lose part of him through time. But also like that constant reminder is not going to destroy her every day. But
yeah, and it was near that section when she was also talking about writing her first professional article without having John edit it. And she's like, reflects on it, and she says, Did I actually make a difference when I was talking to those doctors at UCLA? Maybe I did, maybe I didn't. It would have happened with or without me. John died with or without me, but this is just with me. It happens with me or doesn't happen without me. It's actually something I need to do. write, just finish this article. And that was a positive moment, which is also negative, like everything else in this book is, but also it was a mixed thing.
A bit, I forgot to mention this before when we talked about her feeling at peace more when she figured out the death at the autopsy, but I think she's pretty lucky to have all the information to actually be able to dial it in. She did all that deduction. It seemed like 100% legit, like 100% accuracy. Like the doorman recorded when they left and everything, and like it was just have all that information to be able to 100% without a doubt. Like,
I mean, it's not 100% without a doubt. Even she admitted.
But yeah, it's pretty good.
It's.
And I guess a lot of the information wasn't even relevant to what she found in the end, but pretty comforting. Have that. Like, it was a huge thing for her.
He was dead when she made the call.
Oh. Yeah. I have another happy moment that I thought was a really good moment of humanity. I just really loved, and it reminds me of I'm not sure where I heard it, but I heard this one guy, went through a death, and he just wanted to be left alone, and the guy knew that he shouldn't leave his friend alone, and so he insisted on coming to see him, and but he just sat in his driveway for the whole night and just said, "Hey, I'm just wanting to let you know I'm here for you." And apparently that was one of the most impactful things they had when they were going through their grief. But just I don't know. I thought that was really meaningful when I heard that story. And this kind of reminds me of this a little bit. I had friends quite often with Earl McGrath, whose intuitive kindness in the situation must ask me every morning what I was doing that night, and if the answer was in any way vague, to arrange an untaxing dinner for 2 or 3 or 4 at Orzo or at Morton's or at his house or at Robinson or on Robinson Boulevard. I like that.
Yeah. The intuitive
answer
kindness.
Was in any way vague. Okay, we're going for dinner.
Yeah. I really like that. And earlier in the book when she's talking about the old book of wisdom or whatever, from the 20s. What's that? It was a book about grief.
Yeah, bring broth.
Yeah, bring broth or something like that. Don't cry too much or something like that. It's all these do everything very properly.
Yeah, have a little bit to eat but not too much.
Yeah, if you don't know the family that well, stand in the back unless the church is small.
Yeah,
stand kind of close. But it's
yeah. It's some of them are a bit crazy, and the other ones you're oh, it's kind of some of it was very good advice.
Yeah.
But then immediately after that, she takes that theme of that ancient, I don't know I can't remember the specific term she used, but some sort of wisdom, generational wisdom. And then one of her friends every day for a month brought Lisa Nalgai wisdom. One of her friends brought congee from Chinatown every night for her to eat. The same exact congee from the same place. And that was all she could eat for the whole month. And I was generational wisdom. And I was wow. Pretty powerful.
Yeah. It's those moments where you're just getting a lot more faith in humanity when you read those things. You're fuck, that's just such a good thing to do. Good people out there, man.
Yeah, I guess one of the other bits that was kind of impactful was she kept spiraling into the thought patterns of what if I had done something different? What if I had pushed back on John moving somewhere and stayed with what I was doing, or stayed with my original opinion? Would John still be alive? It's really easy to get into those those spiraling thought patterns of, oh, what if I did X instead?
Especially if you like, you kind of know you're right to, like, you know what I mean? Like, there would actually have been a big difference. Like, I think a lot of hers, I guess, it probably would have had a big difference, but like, yeah.
I feel like there wasn't a lot she could have done.
Yeah.
Yeah, there wasn't.
There wasn't anything. She's watching the aspirin commercial, and she's like, "Oh, what if he was on aspirin?" And she's like, "But logically, I knew that he was on a way better version of aspirin already."
Yeah.
The whole time. So
Yeah, that was for the people reading it and be like, why was he on aspirin? How did you not know that? Everyone should be on aspirin. Nah, I got you.
let me just throw this in.
Yeah, let me throw it for those people that are thinking there's actually something you could have done.
That's the pre-Twitter response.
Yeah. I liked this is they're quoting a book where protagonists J.J. McClure and Teresa Keene see the tornado in the far distance, black and then milky. J.J. tells Teresa not to worry. This stretch has been hit before. Twisters never hit the same place twice. The tornado finally set down without an incident just across Wyoming line. That night, in the step right in, at the junction between Higginson and Higgins, Teresa asked if it was true that tornadoes never hit the same place twice. I don't know, JJ said. It seemed logical, like lightning. You were worried. I didn't want you worried. It was as close a declaration of love as JJ was capable of making. That was a beautiful moment.
And then she goes to go along. Oh, she questions the grammar of that sentence.
Yep.
Oh yeah.
Quite extensive.
Yeah, that was I actually really like that part. I thought that was really well thought out and like impactful.
I really enjoyed it as well.
I thought for sure when Quintana had the dilated pupils that she was not going to make it by the end of the book, but she ended up making it. Although I did just look it up.
Oh no!
Oh no!
She died less than a year and a half later.
Oh my
Dylan.
August 26th, 2005.
Oh man, I thought there was something good from this book. Gosh.
Oh no! Oh my. Fuck.
I want to know more about her after that, man. Like, did she ever recover from that?
Not sure.
Lived.
Finish the thought that we were saying. I have a highlight from that too, just from a sentence thing. It was not the kind of sentence, if you had written it, you would want wrong. But neither was it the kind of sentence, if that was the way you had written it, you would want it changed.
Yeah, that was that quote I thought was really true, absolutely true.
Yeah, and then that story we talked about before. That's not what I meant at all. I knew what he meant, Susan said. Had I understood nothing. I just love how the kid knows the whole time. Him and John are on the same page, and then Joan's like, no. I fucking got it all wrong.
You didn't mean that? No,
and then
yeah,
John's like, not at all. Like, that's not at all what I meant. You're not even close. Like, you're... And Susan's like, I knew what he meant. Like, I'm not even like, you doubting it doesn't make me doubt it because I know so well. It's like, oh shit. Yeah, this kid's like, yeah.
All evens out in the end.
Yeah.
Brutal.
the end, everyone dies.
Yep. She lived another 16 years after Quinton died. So. Well, is there anything else? Probably lots of stuff, but can't think of anything.
Closing thoughts.
Let's have another couple highlights, or at least one more. I really like this line when they walk down. When they walk down the aisle, John had written down some things about their on their 26th anniversary. As we walked down the aisle, we promised each other that we could get out of this next week and not wait until death did us part. So that was a really, I don't know, kind of a. And then they stayed together, obviously, for their whole rest of their lives. I just thought that was really beautiful. Like that constant reminder, like, hey, we're not forcing anything here by getting married. We're gonna continue to be, live our best lives, and if that's not together, then that's not we're not gonna. We won't be together. Then we're not gonna force it just because we're here right now. And I hope they held on to that, and I'm guessing they did, and for them to stay together forever. Really.
Well, on her
Beautiful.
last birthday with him, he reads that passage from her book and says, "God damn, don't ever tell me you can't write."
Yeah.
That was fucking beautiful.
25
days before he died.
Yeah. And then when she's writing that last piece, she's imagining a message from him, and she's saying like, "Oh, I never got anything from him," because some people apparently hallucinate and get messages. And whatever I finally did to finish the piece was as close as I've ever came to imagining a message from him. The message was simple: "You're a professional. Finish the piece." It occurs to me that we allow ourselves to imagine only such messages as we need to survive. That was fucking intense line.
Yeah, it's like, I really like that line. It's such a hard line, but it's like there's so much wrapped up in it from him too. Their whole life as writers together, depending on one another. It's just like, do your job. Like, you're still there, you're still alive, and I'm gone. You know what I'd say. So much power behind that.
That's all she wrote? No, actually.
There's a lot more books that she
That's a lot.
wrote.
No, and there's a lot more to that book than we just talked about, and yeah.
Right.
Yeah, overall, it was a very enjoyable read for me. Even though some of it bored me, but there wasn't really any point when I was not fixed on what I was reading and trying to get the most out of it. So there's a lot of depth in this.
Nonfiction book coming in again. Let's go.
This is probably the best nonfiction book we've read so far.
I agree. Definitely. I don't think John Green's got anything
John
on
Green
this.
interviewed not quite as powerful as this.
No.
Yeah.
No.
Because, I do remember the geese though.
Geese. That book. I still think that was the best. That was like the best discussion book that we read. That was nonfiction. I remember we had
a good format. We had some fun with it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
We did. We talked a lot on that one.
like to go back
I
and
agree.
rewatch that one.
Yeah, I honestly think that was like one of the more interesting discussions we've had on that book. Even though it was probably one of the worst books we've read.
I feel like we were just trolling each other with the ratings at the end, like halfway through that podcast. I remember when
I was
Dylan
never
gave
trolling.
Geese, you gave Geese 5 stars, bro. And that
I
was-
did. I stand by that.
Yeah, I know you do. Crazy,
not-
bro.
The day he dies.
Give these 5
Um,
stars.
Yeah, but to close my thoughts on this, very well written. I would recommend it to anyone. And I enjoyed it. As always, talking about it with you guys has made me appreciate it more. And it had some very freaking crazy powerful lines in it that I will remember for a long time after this.
Just want to point out Maui is the most adorable cat that
He
exists on
is.
Earth.
He sneezed while you were
What is
giving that
happening now?
quote, and
What is that?
can you actually repeat that quote? Because now he sneezed halfway through, and you can see on the recording, I jumped so hard when he sneezed, and I was so out of it.
What quote?
What about the last quote you were reading?
Oh, it was
read.
long.
It was long.
Well, it's tough because everything all the quotes I am are like need the context around it. But whatever I finally did to finish the piece was as close as I have ever come to imagining a message from him. The message was simple: "You're a professional. Finish the piece." It occurs to me that we allow ourselves to imagine only such messages as we need to survive.
Yeah, no, that's very, very insightful. Very insightful, and yeah. I think not necessarily true, but it definitely happens. Or like not necessarily true all the time. It's also very possible to imagine messages that aren't there that are detrimental.
Yes.
But yeah. It's just your mind working for or against you in whatever situation.
I also like the concept of her having to finish that piece being like her needing to survive, and I know it's like obviously very dramatized because like she's not gonna die if she doesn't write it, but like it is like
I would say maybe
moving forward. It's moving
Yeah.
forward. You know.
I wouldn't even say it's really dramatized.
Yes, I'm saying like in the the exact literal sense that she wouldn't have died the next day if she wouldn't have read that piece, but it is.
Yeah,
Yeah,
but
if you want to
like,
live, be
should
dead.
have been,
but
you know, death's not a binary. Remember,
spiritually dead.
Yep.
that was a death. That was a part that I liked quite a bit. Like death is a binary, but it isn't truly. You can live in, you can be half living.
Black and white.
Yeah, it's not black and white. Yeah.
Have I finished your remarks, or I would definitely recommend it to anyone. I think it'd be an interesting. I think yeah, if you were going through grief, I wonder how this book would impact you. But I think even without going through grief and without going through hard time, I think it's a book that you can appreciate, as evidenced through you two and me for half this book, or like more than half this book probably. But and I was never going through nearly as much grief as she was going through in this. Just like going through a bit of a tough time. I feel like it was able to get closer to the emotions that she was able to feel, which made me connect with the book more.
My guess is a lot of people have been going through their own grief when picking this one up. It's like it's a bit of a random one to just start reading, like we did.
Yeah, the books I recommended you guys were so sad. This book, which is even more sad, and then it was like a fiction book.
I told my mom I was reading this. She's like, "What? Who the fuck picked that one?"
I know. Every time I was like, "Well, I gave them choices." So
Yeah.
they
No,
Alan has a
picked
hot
this
streak.
one.
the first our trial podcast, the first ever one we did was the death of Ivan Ilyich.
Yeah, what
And
book was
man,
more savage than this book or that book?
that book was way more savage, bro. Oh my god, man, that book was insane.
That book was worse. That book was like, this book is more real. I don't know though. Actually, that book was like so upsetting. Yeah. This person's going through grief, and like the world pulls together to hold her up. You know, buying her meals and like.
Well, it's just explains it so well. It's like, it's just good. Whereas that book just like gives you depression. Like it just makes you feel bad for the person. The fictional character.
If you wanna read it ever, Dylan, it's pretty short. It's like 50, 70 pages. Death of Ivan Ilyich. Yeah, it's a philosophy. It's like I read it in my philosophy. Death and dying.
It's about a man who exists through life but doesn't live and dies.
Which you've talked about that, Dylan. So there you go. You should read it. You can completely empathize with them.
Existing through life but not existing.
Yeah, no, just a very harsh way of saying, like with what you said about just like floating.
Yeah.
It's like that. A book is like floating to like the max degree. Like the worst case of floating that ever has existed in all time is that book.
Jeez. Yeah, and the first chapter of the book is the only chapter not from his perspective. And it's about how everyone's like arranging his funeral and what everyone's thinking. And they're just all thinking about like his inheritance like being divided. Like his best friend is like, I gotta attend this guy's funeral. Like time out of my day. Like it's just, it just starts like that and it just gets worse. It just gets worse from there.
So upsetting. I don't know why I read it again. I think I'm gonna read it again one day. I don't know, man. It's a book. It's just. I
feel like it took like out of 10. Like my mood out of 10 like took me 2 notches down for like a couple weeks.
Jeez. All right, maybe I won't read that.
Yeah.
Or I can read it and then be like, nah, it didn't affect me at all.
Yeah, then you're completely stone cold killer.
Stone cold killer.
If that book doesn't impact you.
I don't know what's going on there.
You're good, man. Then you're John. You're John.
Only books that impact me are Kaladin Stormblood.
Fair enough, though. When you read about someone for 300 pages, for like 800 pages. I will say I was reading this book for a little bit, and I told Kieran this already, but I was out and for a work trip, and I was like, really, this book was hitting me hard that time when I was reading it, and you could tell because this person started talking about they walked down the beach and they ran into this old man, and they were talking about this old man, and the old man was saying, she was relaying the story that the old man had said to her that like, this is where my wife and I always have come, and like for the last like 20 years or something, and they had this beautiful conversation. It was just really special moment she had with this old dude that she met, and when she was telling the story, I was fully convinced that the wife was dead. That like he was coming back and like, like reliving their memories, and I was like, and like partway through, I was like, then all of a sudden like randomly someone said that like the wife was like in the lodge. They saw the wife the next day in the lodge or something, and I was like, I immediately just like out loud said, I'm like, oh my, thank goodness that she's alive. There was like 6 people there. I'm like, oh man, I couldn't handle that right now. If you told me that she was dead, I would have lost it right now.
Oh, no.
I fucking said that when everyone's like, "What are you talking about?" I'm like, "Oh, like people don't even know that well." I was like, "I'm sorry, I had to let that out, man."
It's like
such a sigh of relief.
I'm reading a book right now.
And I explained the book. I'm like, I'm reading this book, and like it's this exact situation, but the person died suddenly, and I'm like, I don't know, man. I couldn't take it. But that, anyways, that was just an example of this book. Back to me. But yeah, on to less depressing things.
Yeah.
We're taking a turn. We're gonna read some Warbreaker. I'm excited.
Brandon's arms. Brandon's warm embrace.
Back to Brandon's warm embrace. I gotta see. Is Sunlit Man on Audible now? I wonder. It wasn't on there for a bit.
Ernie Mitchell's out on Spotify again.
Hmm.
Reading Brando. Life's turned around. Joni Mitchell was off Spotify for 2 years, and she's one of my favorite. Well, I don't know if I'd say she's one of my favorite artists, but her one album is like one of my favorite albums of all time.
Oh man, so good, man. I was smiling my ass off at work listening to that.
Dude, I
album.
was on like cloud 9 that day. Like I walked by like nuts. Like I felt like a little like crazy how excited I was. Like
Yeah, Nathan said like he was telling me we were driving up Island together, and Nathan was telling me about that because we were listening to Joni Mitchell, and he's like, "Yeah, I'll just look over around, and he'd just be like smiling and nodding his head, like maniacally smiling."
yeah.
He's like, it was a little odd, bro. It was a little weird.
Dude, I felt a little crazy in that moment. I was so happy, and then I got like so triggered because like there was only I realized I was only playing 4 songs in the album, but I didn't notice for like quite a while. And on the phone, there was only 4 songs available, but for some reason on my desktop version, all of them were available. And then like a few hours later, all of them were on, which is odd because like they didn't come out that day; they came out the day before. Like there was a glitch on Spotify. Anyways, yeah. So that came out. That made my week, and now we're reading Brando. So
Maui
we're off
says
to this
goodbye.
freaking book.
The podcast. Bye bye. We'll see you
Bye,
next
Maui.
time on Books on Tap.
All right.
You guys got any last words?
See you later. Thank you for this amazing book, Joanne.
Joan.
Joan. Which one is it?
Joan.
Joan.
Joanne has an E at the end and 2 N's.
Thank you for correcting me. Thank you, Joan. May you rest in peace. You, John, and Quintana. And thank you for this beautiful book. And I hope that it helps us in our times of grief in our life. And I hope that it helps many other people.
See you next time.